warp in 3, 2, 1.
Alright, computer. Let's hook up to the local GNet and let's get this going.
Initiating connection to Jupiter GNet Hub. Connection to Jupiter GNet Hub established.
Okay, computer. Open up comms to all our viewers and begin transmitting our latest file.
Transmitting John, and the spaceboat. The Tumbling Apple.
So, this is the Tumbling Apple then? Asked John, his Applecratian guide, Evelyn, whose ears were once again flopping against the wind. Nodding, she smiled and pointed with her paw to the end's dome-like elongated shape. Indeed it is, John. Come, it seems that a certain someone is eagerly waiting for us inside. I assume you also got a link from Sunny? Smiling, she nodded at John's blinking and softly beeping PDA. He waved his hand above his sensor and saw that the spacer had just linked him. Apparently the man was available for an interview. Talk about luck. Initially, John assumed that he'd have to trek beyond the borders of Applecrate to reach Sunny's home, just to get his interview. Not that he dreaded walking around the planet's surface. Something about derelicts rubbed him the wrong way. That old fossil was a scrapper, and his home, the down colony ship, around which the sensors of John's spaceboat detected those salvage vehicles moving about earlier. From what little he knew of spacers, John was not surprised that this elder called Amy's establishment a dome. After all, most of the buildings here were crafted from recycled metal. This man's family held the salvage rights to most, if not all, easy-to-exploit scrap deposits, and anyone willing to pay a modest fee was free to explore the hulk for some good bits. Just as many others, in his golden years, the old spacer managed some colony-boosting business and offered either a unique service or a valuable resource, all for a fair fee, of course. John knew that without spacers, none of what he experienced today would have been at all possible. These committed to exploration, trade, and constantly creating new businesses people were perhaps Terra's greatest treasure. As a matter of fact, many of the technologies he now had access to were either discovered on some spooky derelict starship or purchased from a neutral alien trader by spacers. The wind suddenly changed its directions and the shopping drone backed away from the road. It wasn't that strong to topple the sturdy vehicle, yet it wasn't weak either, and John ordered his holocam snap another 360 shot of his current surroundings. Fan links, which the H-Lugger got in advance of his IMS spaceboat's maiden voyage, spoke of this planet's freaky weather patterns. Yet the strong gust of wind vanished just as quickly as it came. John suddenly realized that the local businesses had most of their signs secured by outright welding them to the buildings with plasma cutters. Applecrate was a border colony, and most structures were either prefabs made of easily assembled megasteel panels or bunker-light homes. The inn standing before him and Eve was what a fringe space dome should look like, much wider than usual. Its owner, Amy First, had commissioned the construction of some extensions in order to improve its functionality. The first and second floors were probably what the owner had initially built. It was the classic Dome Inn, a bar/restaurant on the first, and then rooms for rent on the second floor. Just like all the other domes he had visited already, this one too had a basement, and for what Eve mentioned, Amy used to store vast assortments of alcohol beverages. Perhaps in the beginning she also brewed her now signature blue apple cider, the Blue Drop, there. Now, after the two new floors had been built, Amy's venue had a parking lot, double the room capacity, and there was a small brewery attached to the back of the dome. With the wind changing direction once more, John's nose detected the unmistakable smell of baked apples coming from its air ducts. Before entering the Tumbling Apple, he noticed the dome's roof was covered with heat collectors. Not an engineer himself, he decided to ask Eve first before shooting a search command in his PDA to try his luck on the net. "What do you know about the heat collectors, Eve? They look like Starship heat sinks to me." Eve stopped her paw before pushing the door's open button and again scratched her snout. She sidestepped from the doorway and then pointed towards the starport before answering. "Not surprisingly, the heat collectors are similar to what spaceships use, yes. That is because most of what you see is actually repurposed from old heat sinks, John. You know how people on these border colonies love using and recycling instead of simply discarding old stuff?" She laughed and then waved the shopping drone near, tapping its metallic frame, pointed at the plasma seams. "Local kids made these, and if you like, I can show you around their marketplace stall tomorrow. What do you say?" "That's a wonderful idea. You know what? I have a parking slot inside my spaceboat's hangar for a ground vehicle, and I am all for promoting local businesses. Can you please link them, Eve, and ask if they're able to craft something bigger than a simple wheeled drone? Tell them we'll meet tomorrow and iron out the details." The bunny nodded, and then without saying another word proceeded to type a holonote, linked it, and pressed the door button, again with amazing speed. "Done and done, John. We can meet 'em on the morrow, see?" Her PDA beeped, and she showed him the return link. "It says here that they would love to slap something together from the salvage they've hauled themselves. If not, one of the boys knows Logan. His dad works as a fabrication engineer at the vehicle bay you may have already seen on your descent. Now, let us finally enter. I am so thirsty my snout itches. Again." John let her walk inside the inn first and then followed, his holocam again taking as many slides as possible. Once inside, and after the venue's door had slid shut behind him, his eyes explored the dome's bar floor. There were multiple tables, and many have already been occupied by the gathering of off-duty spaceship crewmen, a sizable team of blue wall security girls, and workers on their lunch breaks. Then there were more than the odd scrapper wandering about. Colorful spacesuits adorned with all manners of murals which depicted one near impossible feat or another. Their voices were the loudest. He fixed his sensors on his holocam. Spacer tales were freely shared with everyone, and most Terrans knew that if some details were slightly embellished, these men and women never lied. All carried vicious-looking pistols in their mag holsters, and John knew that they'd never use those when testing each other's skills. Commonplace for all domes, the dueling square was located in the back and well shielded by an energy field. Never mind that those who entered it would draw stunners instead of their deadly weapons. Sometimes the square was used as a boxing ring, and people valued their safety. Following Eve, who had already pointed at their reserved by Sunny table, he attempted to count the number of spacers around. John raised an eyebrow. Indeed, he expected there to be at least a dozen. It was a border colony, after all. Instead, the number of brash-looking explorers was around 20, and those were the ones he saw here loitering around the bar. He even recognized some of their family crests. In addition to the explorers, there was a group of 6 haulers, or deep space traders. To him, they looked fresh from a successful trading expedition. The long table they feasted on was covered with all sorts of bottles and large plates full of sliced meats. That, and there was a pile of credit chits at the center of it. As always, people like them love to boast to other spacers of their own hard-earned achievements. In another few seconds, John and Evelyn reached their table, and a grizzled old man whose dented spacesuit was covered with more and prettier murals than the spacers he'd seen so far approached them. "Hello there, youngsters. Sit, please. I already made dinner arrangements. John?" The short, stocky, and yet surprisingly athletic looking for his age senior shook his hand. Just as their custom dictated, Sonny's greatest accomplishments was painted on the chest of his spacesuit. His mural portrayed the feat he was most well known for in these parts, depicted his small vessel towing some ancient derelict while exchanging weapon fire with pirates. John winced and then looked at Sonny's face. The pirate starship bore a clan crest he knew nothing about. Catching his eyes, the old spacer smirked and then, after all three sat down around the table, asked, "I know you want to ask old Sonny a great many things, and I did agree to give you an interview. The spacer's word does not split in two. Then again..." The spacer made a strange-looking gesture with his glove, and another spacesuit-wearing man brought a whole box of Blue Drop cider. "One can talk only that long, John. You know, once a man in my line of work reaches this age, he should be thankful he still has his marbles." John looked at the old man's chest mural and then grabbed a bottle of cider. He had to decide. In the links exchanged with Amy, the wizened woman mentioned that she too knew quite a lot about this mysterious planet. Indeed, the fact that she was called first in and of itself meant that Amy was part of the group that had initially landed here. Being a good H-logger not only meant having a good set of eyes and ears or being capable of holocam operator, all of those were the basic requirements for the job. For one to become the best, better than all the rest, he had to feel the story. Right now, John felt that this old scrapper could tell him something great, which he and millions of other subscribers would be the first to hear. He carefully examined all the murals on Sonny's spacesuit, and then, after noting another one just as interesting as the chess piece, John popped open his cider. Only then he noticed that Eve had no bottle before her, and, being the courteous fellow that he was, offered to give her his already opened cider. She respectfully declined, making a well-known crossed paw sign, and muttered, "I'm on guide duty today, and as much as I'd love to have some bubbly juice, I can't. This is hard cider and has 10% or more alcohol content. What good is a guide who staggers around spouting incoherent prattle and sees two or more Johns? No, it's a sashi for me, and that's it." The bunny sent a link with her order, and only a half-minute later, a server brought her a chilled to absolute perfection Asashi Super Moist. John knew exactly what the name of this company meant. Asa meaning morning, and she, master. Indeed, the beer was of such great quality, so refined, that even after consuming copious amounts of it, one felt little to no hangover. Henceforth, master of one's morning. It was one of the most well-known and consumed beers in Japan. Favored beverage for those who had to get up early the next day and go to work, attend to their daily routines without having to suffer from hangover. Grabbing the can, Eve immediately took a hefty gulp, smacking with her lips afterwards, and she smiled. Between hearing the story how Sonny managed to haul this alien starship and the other mural he noticed, John chose the latter. Even now, simply looking at the scene, his imagination ran wild. Sonny's small spaceship was depicted lurking, hiding inside the shadow of a gutted derelict, one giant, menacing-looking vehicle on the prowl, looking for him. Without any hesitation, the H-logger pointed at Sonny's right shoulder, and the spacer smirked. "Well then, what can I say? You did pick one of me best stories, son." The old-timer chuckled, and made another one of his special signs. How about we chat over a full belly, huh? I say a couple of pork and vegetable skewers, specialty of Amy's, plus a bottle of that hard cider will do the trick. John saw another server running, her hands holding each a platter full of steaming hot shashliks. The staple Slavic bar food was arranged over freshly steamed and barbecued vegetables. The aroma was maddening, and once more John felt his stomach rumbling. So there was I. My starship scanner had just pinpointed the location of this here derelict. And Sonny finger tapped the large spaceship painted on his chest. When this huge thing, bumped out of hyperspace.
Okay, computer, that's it. Disconnect from the GNet and set course for Omega Prime.
Disconnecting GNet. Setting course. Omega Prime. Stalling engines now. Initiating. Jumping in 3, 2, 1.